Everybody knows who I am. So I'm here with Lance Wallen, and Lance and I have been having a really interesting conversation on Facebook Messenger about batteries. And there's a lot of nonsense about batteries out there, and very few people who have actually done research on them and studied them and know about them talk about them. And Lance at least talks a good game and sounds like he knows what he's talking about. So I said, instead of keeping all this conversation to ourselves, let's do a call and let's see if we can get some of it down. So why don't we start by telling us, how do you know about batteries, and what do you know? I mean, what do you do?
You said that a lot of people who know about it don't talk about it. That's because a lot of the things that we've been talking about tend to put people to sleep. So
Not the viewers of this channel.
it gets talked about, but it usually gets ignored halfway through the nap. But I've been running a electronic cigarette, a vape company for 5 or 6 years, something like that. Now I'm not one for anniversaries, but and I'm a big geek, so anything I get involved in, I have to learn as much about as possible. And the biggest kind of safety issue with vaping early on was that people were trying to get more and more vapor production, and they were using mechanical mods and things like that. And we use lithium cylinder cells in most of our devices.
So like the 18650s,
Yeah,
right?
18650s, all 18350s. For there's a bunch of form factors, but mostly the 18650. And battery safety started to become an issue. A couple of people vented batteries because they were using scavenged 18650s from
Right.
laptop powered battery packs. And
It's one thing if you vent a battery, that's a new term for me, but I know what you're talking about. It's one thing if you vent a battery in the middle of a field after you crash your copter, and it's another thing if you vent a battery while you're taking a hit off a vaporizer right in your own face. I bet.
right,
I
which I
bet
think is the
it's,
big
yeah,
thing that drove. I think that's why maybe that there's been more attention paid to the lithium chemistry and all that jazz with the vape industry, even though it's younger than the RC world. So with the vape thing, it was a safety issue, right? If I'm going to sell, I designed my own products, specifically mechanical
hmm
mods and a couple of other doodads while I was over the course of the last few years, and I don't want to get sued, right?
right.
So
Makes
I'm going
sense.
to sell batteries. I need to know about those batteries. I don't want to sell something that I don't know enough about, and then I'm obsessive compulsive when it comes to learning stuff. So
Okay.
when I start digging in, then it's like, well, why does that happen, and why does that happen, and why?
Right.
And then I end up
Right.
reading things on physics forums.
Right.
But um, it basically, I started doing heavy research into lithium batteries and for my store. And then I ended up apparently going way deeper than most people do.
Right.
And I was talking to a couple of engineers for Panasonic. I think they're now Sanyo, or no, Sanyo got bought out by Panasonic, so they're still Panasonic, but they
And
work with the Sanyo guys.
And part of the reason I think that this information is so hard to come by is that a lot of this stuff is proprietary, right? So it's hard to get those guys on the
Yeah,
phone to tell you, even basic stuff. They kind of don't want to talk.
yeah, and so with the interesting place that I was with the vape industry, and what gave me kind of an inlet there
hmm
is you can buy. I mean, technically you can buy 18650s, but you'll never walk into like a Batteries Plus or a hobby shop and find 18650s, not legit ones that are decent.
Now, by legit,
Um,
you mean you'll find like Chinese ripoffs, but not like
right. You're
Panasonic
not.
or Sanyo. Like,
Yeah, you're not going to find any of the big five.
okay, who
The
are the
Panasonic,
big five?
LG, Sony. It might be four now because of Sanyo. So Panasonic, Sony, LG, MNKE, if you want to be nice,
Okay,
and Sanyo. They kind of make the best of the best batteries.
okay,
Um, and they will not sell. Like if I go to Panasonic tomorrow and say, "Look, I've got a vape shop. I want to sell your 18650s to my customers. Here's $1 billion. I'll pay you $20 a sell." They'll
right,
give me the finger, tell me to
right.
move on.
They just won't do it.
They do not sell, right, because those most of those cells, especially the unprotected cells,
Right.
don't have any. There's nothing. If you short those things, they're high energy, high output.
Yeah.
They're gonna
And
fail
as an RC
potentially
as an RC
catastrophically.
hobbyist, that doesn't bother me because I deal with unprotected lipos all the time. But I could see how somebody like Panasonic wouldn't want to sell that to the public because they can hurt
Right.
themselves.
Well,
Yes.
and then there's a catch between the two types. So because I couldn't buy the batteries when I called them, I had to be a pack manufacturer to buy cells from the big guys.
Okay.
And then if I resold the batteries, they would yell at me.
If
But
you
I never
resold the
did that.
individual cells, you mean? They would
Yeah.
let you make
So
packs.
yeah, then that's
Okay.
how these cells enter the market, and that's why I say it's a gray market. If you buy a Sony 18650, you got it through the gray market. A pack manufacturer bought a bunch of them, and at some point, it made its way into someone less wholesome's hands, who's now selling it to somebody
Gotcha.
else like me, who may be less wholesome as well and sell it.
Or frankly, there's probably a fair chance that it's not really a Panasonic or whoever, and just
Yeah,
somebody in China cranked them out and said they're Panasonics. So if you're
yeah, and that's
which
where
is it,
supply chain matters.
if you think you're buying like Panasonic or any of those big name cells, you probably aren't. Or if you are, they're gray market, but chances are you're not. And is there any way to tell if what you're getting is
Yes,
legit?
there are some ways to tell, and most of them aren't safe, so I don't recommend it to anybody.
Okay.
I highly recommend if you if you need 18650s and you need legit ones, go to Orbtronics.
Hmm.
Those guys do a good job. Go to Battery Bros. Do a little bit of research into vape shops, because some of the vape shops, like myself and Cobalt Vapors and a few others, are very particular about our supply chain,
Yeah.
and we only buy from places that know they're going to lose a
Right.
lot of money if we end up with some counterfeits in our hands, and they
Okay.
know we'll do the dangerous crap to check every now and then.
So we're talking
Uh,
about 18650s here. So here are the 18650 cells we're talking about. If you're familiar with, if you work with maybe high output flashlights or of course vaporizers, you've seen these. If you're not, oh, there you go. If you're not familiar with these are really handy. I make 2-cell packs for my Fat Shark goggles out of these. One of these is about 3,000 milliamp hours, more or less. At least that's what it's rated at. And for about the size of one of those Fat Shark, dog bones that has something like 2,100 milliamp hours, you can have 3,000 milliamp hours, or I think it's 18. Anyway, but the RC hobbyists are using LiPos, and the tie-in here is that underneath they're the same, right?
yeah,
18650 is just a rolled-up LiPo.
Yeah, we call them jelly rolls.
Yeah.
There's some minor differences as far as they use a more fluid electrolyte, and they a lot of times the can, and that term venting comes from the fact that it is a hard shell canister, and they put when
Right.
batteries fail. More detail later, I'm sure. The stuff happens inside, which then that's why your batteries puff.
Yeah.
Well, there's nothing to puff in a cylinder cell.
No.
So they build vents into them so that the gas can escape.
So let's talk first about let's start with the basics and talk about the structure of a LiPo and how a LiPo makes energy. Okay.
Okay.
Let's start there.
Do you want the eyes? You want the short eyes in the back of the head version, or the?
I don't know. Let's see. Let's see. What's in a LiPo? What's it made up of?
Cathode, anode, electrolyte, and then structural crap.
Right.
Cathode's going to be the positive. It's usually some type of lithium oxide, lithium cobalt is one of the main, most commonly used ones, but there's actually better versions, and again, we'll talk about that later. I have no idea what chemistry our LiPos use. I know all the chemistries for all my 18650s,
Right.
but so cathode, positive side, some kind of lithium oxide metal.
Mm-hmm.
The anode, negative side, and that's going to be some form of carbon, usually graphite.
Mm-hmm.
And the graphene batteries are a whole different bag. Really cool batteries involve graphite and silicon, which is interesting in the chemistry. And then the electrolyte is usually some kind of lithium salt solution that's heavily charged, not charged, but heavily doped, I guess, with lithium ion producing materials. And the lithium, like LiPo, is for, they think that means it has a polymer electrolyte.
Mm-hmm.
There is an actual lithium polymer battery. We're not using it. It's got a solid electrolyte, and it requires heating up before it's even functional.
Oh, interesting.
Our lithium polymer batteries are polymerized electrolyte. They usually make them jelly by adding stuff, and it's different depending on who it is, as opposed to old lithium batteries were fully fluid.
Okay.
And again, sometimes they use a mesh, like a porous material that's soaked in electrolyte, and it's microporous. It's not like an actual sponge, but it's microporous. It has a good ion transference.
Okay.
So how it works, the
Yeah.
not terrible version, when the battery's charged up, any battery, the way it works is your ions basically move from one side to the other, causing a charge differential, which causes electrons to flow
And they
from one
move.
terminal.
So you have a positive potential on the anode,
Yes.
and then the electrons
Yes.
flow through the discharge lead.
The ions move, which
Right.
changes the charge potential. And when the charge potential changes, nature likes balance, so
Right.
the electrons try to move around the other way.
Right.
Um,
And the ions move through the electrolyte, right?
yeah.
So you've got,
Yeah, they
you
travel.
can think of it like a sandwich, essentially. You've got the cathode, the electrolyte, and the anode. And the electrons
Yeah.
want to come, I always get it backwards, whether it's electrons moving or charge moving, but the electrons move from the anode out the discharge lead and through the load to the cathode, and the ions move from the cathode through the electrolyte to the anode. Is that correct, or did I get that backwards?
The positive ions move from the anode to the cathode in a charged cell.
Through the
And then-
electrode.
Through the electrolyte.
the electrolyte.
Internally. Yeah,
Yep.
internally. And then through the external circuit, i.e. your
quadcopter.
system, you've got the electrons flowing towards from the anode to the cathode, because it's becoming positively charged, which attracts negative.
So the key thing I think to take from this, for those who may have eyes glazed over by that discussion, is that we think of a battery as a thing that pumps electrons from one end to the other, from the positive lead to the negative lead. But what a lot of people are missing is that there is a physical and a chemical process going on inside the battery, because you can't have current flow. I mean, current always flows and moves sort of in a circle. So if we're pushing electrons from point A to point B, something else is moving inside the battery through the electrolyte, and it's that motion that affects the battery's ability to deliver charge. Is that correct?
Yeah, and it's actually, you kind of said something a little bit backwards. You actually
sorry.
don't have a circle. You
Yeah.
have this. Because
Okay.
you have positive moving to the cathode,
Uh-huh.
which then attracts negative.
Okay.
So the negative motion, that's where you get like reverse voltage and stuff like that. The electrons are actually moving towards the cathode as well,
Uh-huh.
because it's become positively charged by the ions.
Okay.
And so the way of the core of any kind of battery cell, or any kind of battery, doesn't matter what it is the electrode potential of the two materials you use.
Mm-hmm.
I.e., is this material willing to give up electrons versus is this material willing to accept or attract electrons?
Right.
And the difference between those two materials is what determines the voltage,
Right.
because it determines how rapidly
Right.
it's willing to do that, how much it can store,
Right.
etc. Which is why chemistry, the cathode chemistry really matters, because
And this is a key thing. If you really want to understand LiPos, you have to understand the chemistry. And of course, a deep understanding of the chemistry is you could get a PhD on that, right? But my wife is really irritated by the fact that if you over discharge a battery, it gets damaged. She wants to think of a battery as being like a gas tank. You fill it up, and then you run it till it's empty, and then you fill it up again. And I'm like, it's not a gas tank. It's a chemical process that's making electricity. And if you don't understand that chemical process, you can't really have a deep understanding of how a battery works.